All right. Well, here we are. It is draft month officially, April Fool's Day, but I promise you this is not a joke episode. We are going to work through the NFL draft as a whole, kind of giving a look at the strengths, weaknesses of the draft. And Mark and I have some teams that we've pinpointed on what they need to specifically do in the early rounds. And then we'll talk about a few highlight players that we've each chosen. But before we get into the draft stuff, Mark, some big news over the last 24 hours, really, coming down to the NFL. Cam Sutton, who had kind of been missing for a while, was wanted for a domestic violence incident, and he had kind of just gone off the radar for
off
a little
the grid.
while. The Detroit Lions cornerback, he turned himself in, I believe, yesterday or overnight, somewhere in that ballpark. He turned himself into police. Don't know a whole lot about the situation, but obviously not a good look for him, not a good look for the Lions. And obviously he's kind of a big piece, even though he didn't have a great season, was a big get for them in free agency last year. So that's something to certainly monitor. And then the more, obviously that was a story that had been percolating for several weeks because he was gone. Like no one knew where he was, but he's back. He's turned himself in. And then Rashee Rice, you would have thought NFL players, specifically wide receivers at that, would have taken the hint after the Henry Ruggs awful vehicular homicide a few years ago, would have taken the hint that, you can afford these fast cars and you want to live life in the fast lane, but probably best to avoid any of those situations because it can be really bad. It looks like they avoided any fatalities, but there were injuries in which Rashee Rice was driving a Corvette and racing someone in a Lamborghini on a Dallas highway. And it turned into a multi-vehicle accident, and both the Lamborghini and the Chevrolet that Rashee Rice was driving fled the scene. Police were looking for Rashee Rice, and I don't know, Mark, I haven't seen an update if they have made contact with him yet, but
I saw something from, I think, Josina Anderson that he had lawyered up, but that was kind of it at this point in time. Yeah. And because there's as of right now, it's still speculation that he was actually driving that Corvette. It was registered to him or tied to him in some way, shape, or form. Yeah. As far as the two stories go, anytime there's the domestic violence stuff, it's obviously really gross and it's really, it's tough to read all the details in the situation. It's one of those things that it never sits well. And you wait and you wait and you hope that guys, especially these athletes, can learn from the mistakes of the previous people. But also the domestic violence thing is just one of those things where it to me, it reveals a lot of your true colors of like, you're just not a good person. You know what I mean? I don't care what kind of stress you're under financially. Relationships are tough. They can be messy. They can be gross at times. But if you ever result to putting your hands or physically, assaulting someone, especially someone that you're supposed to be in a relationship with, I don't care if it's a woman on a man or man on a woman, man on man, woman, like whatever it is. That's like it just, to me, it reveals a lot of your true colors, and like it's just gross. And I think the NFL does a really good job of basically when that happens, and if it's proven that person did that, they pretty much go by the wayside and their career is over pretty quickly. I mean, you look at the Ray Rices of the world, they never really played football again. And I think that's kind of one of those things that the NFL is really good at cleansing that stuff out, because besides quarterbacks, a lot of players are kind of a dime a dozen. You know what I mean? And a star left tackle, a star edge rusher, they can be really hard to replace, right? They can be really hard to find if you have one of those people and they lose them unexpectedly. But for the most part, you can replace these guys if you're not willing to take your career seriously and your life seriously. And that's a similar thing I feel about Rashee Rice. Like, this is so dumb. And Rashee Rice, what really kills me with him is so young. I mean, he just finished his rookie season. This guy's 22, 23 years old.
On the rise. Yeah, absolutely.
And what's really concerning is it's your first off season, right? So it's your first chance to show your league, your coaches, your teammates, your coaches, all of that you not only can handle the success that you've gone under, but you can be trusted to be, you know, a good member of society. You know, the NFL loves to help these guys create charities, create causes, to do camps, to do all these things, to just be like, hey, we're going to help you save your money. We're also going to help you find ways to make your communities a better place, because they know a lot of these guys come from tough neighborhoods. And like the first,
they build up the Walter Payton Man of the Year award. That's why
you're a month and a half removed from the Super Bowl, barely scratching the start of the offseason, and you are doing dumb stuff like this. And the thing that's really concerning is you make the dumb decision to street race your boys, whatever, right? You got guns in the car. That's what TMZ's reporting. Part of, like, they saw guns with these guys as they were leaving their vehicles. So you have a bad decision on top of a bad decision. That's like saying, hey, drinking and driving is really dumb. Really, really dumb. Drinking and driving while also then like smoking weed out the window, like, is really, really dumb. Drinking, driving, smoking weed while drinking a beer, really, really, really dumb. You know what I mean? Yeah. Drinking, driving, smoking beer, weed, and guns, like, they're compound. Like, he didn't make just one bad decision. It wasn't like he had too many drinks and then he got behind the wheel. He made a bunch of bad decisions in a row, like guns in the car, drag racing against your boys, causing the accident, and then not saying to themselves, okay, shit, this went too far. We have got to clean this up. Is everyone okay? Is if you would have stayed at the scene and handled this wouldn't be a story, right? The story might be.
I mean, it would be, but well, yes, yeah, but it would be a different narrative being spun.
Exactly, it's a different narrative. The narrative now is like Rashid Rice could just be like, this could lead to him missing the whole year. Where if he had caused a wreck because he'd done something dumb and no one was that badly injured, and you soothe it over and you admit, hey, we made a mistake. Boys will be boys, just being dumb. There was no drugs involved, no alcohol involved. Like, we just were dumb and it was a bad mistake. And we're going to own up to it. We'd look at this like a completely different thing. And I don't know if it necessarily would be completely leading. It might be leading the show because it's the offseason. There's not a ton to talk about, but it's really, really concerning. And if you're the Chiefs right now, you got to just be frustrated as all you know what, because you already knew wide receiver was a position of need going into the draft. But I could very easily see Rashid Rice, with all of the things that are trickling out, he may miss the entire season. Yeah, no, that's, I mean, the consequences are going to be strong. And that's just talking about what the NFL will hand down, let alone what the judicial system will hand down. I mean, I think the sad part of this all is that some could interpret his decision to flee the scene as being, unfortunately, the smart legal move in his case, because now they do have to prove that he was driving. And that really sucks. Because that teaches the wrong lesson, of course, to people with money that can afford good lawyers in this instance, in that, you know, he may be able to get out from under it in some way, but it still reflects on you as an individual and as a, you know, just a moral decision. He's going to try to show not make sure that people are okay. He's going to blame it on his interpreter.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, Dan, you nailed it there. It's really frustrating. And I do think, again, why these guys, you'd think you nailed it with the Henry Ruggs thing. Like, you'd think that would have been the nail in the coffin for, like,
to just at least scare people off.
At least for another couple more years. Like, that incident still feels so fresh. And he was such a talent.
2021, right? I believe.
Yeah, such a talent that's just now wasting away in prison because he just couldn't help but make extremely dumb decisions. And these guys, I mean, it's hard. We all can say, you know, we all did dumb stuff when we were 20, 21, 22, 23. How much more dumb would we have been if we had millions of dollars at our fingertips? I don't know. You'd like to say you have the right people around you, you'd make the right decisions, but Rashid Rice right now looks like he just made a bunch of bad decisions in a row. And I wouldn't blame the NFL even just for the optics of this. And you know what I mean? Again, teaching, because he matters to the Kansas City Chiefs, but in the whole of the NFL, Rashid Rice is a dime a dozen player, right?
Yeah.
So if you're the NFL, protecting your shield and protecting your brand, which they always do, wouldn't shock me at all if Roger Goodell came down extremely hard just to say, listen, we don't owe the Chiefs anything. and we don't owe you anything, Rashee Rice. You're not the face of the league. You haven't done anything for us in that regard, except now cause us nothing but a headache, a PR nightmare for this kind of, ongoing theme of young star, players doing really, really dumb decisions. And so, yeah, it wouldn't shock me at all if the league came down hard on Rashee Rice for sure.
Yeah. Well, we'll more to come on that for sure, and we'll keep you all informed as we become more informed on how the situation develops. But enough of that talk. We're going to get ourselves into the NFL draft now, getting ready for the 24 big selection day coming up here in just under 3.5 weeks or so. So very excited to see how things shake out there. But we're going to go over some of the do's, the don'ts, the big gets for this year's draft, a very top heavy draft that we'll be going over here coming up shortly. Let's launch ourselves into the 2024 NFL draft overview.
Serving the Quad Cities area since 1973. And with over 50 years of excellence on their track record, you'll see why it's so easy to trust their experts when it comes to all of your home improvement projects. This family-owned business has you covered on all your needs. Protect your home or building from the elements today and get great roof repair services. Need new windows? No problem. Durham Remodeling can upgrade your windows and doors. Whether you want to upgrade the little details in your home or office, or want to tear a room down and start fresh, the expert contractors at Durham Remodeling have your back. Even the smallest changes can completely transform your space. Ready to start entertaining your friends for backyard barbecues? Durham Remodeling will help you plan, design, and build your deck and patio for the perfect outdoor space. Durham Remodeling's work is 100% guaranteed, so you can rest assured that you're getting the best service around. Call 309-786-6715 today for your free estimate for all your roofing, siding, flooring, windows, and painting needs. That's Durham Remodeling, 309-786-6715.
All right, welcome back in. Dan and Mark here with you in the Football Lounge with Mark and Dan, part of the For Frequency's Sake podcast network. Check out all the shows at forfantasysakeqc.com. Mark, we'll talk about this 2024 NFL draft class and kind of all of the, top positions to target early and often in this one. We had talked about this off air a couple of times and how really it seems the consensus is that the first 2 to 3 rounds are just money with a lot of different positions. And then it really tapers off rounds 4 through 7. The depth, not very good in this one. The last time 4 quarterbacks were taken in the top 10 was in 2018. We may very well see this being the first in 6 years, given this quarterback class is so prevalent and just obviously a lot of pro quality quarterbacks ready to contribute early. Outside of the quarterback position, or maybe if you wanted to expand on the quarterback position, go ahead. But curious what sticks out to you in terms of position groupings for this draft overall.
Well, wide receiver, we talked about it before on the show. I really feel like it wouldn't shock me at all if this draft went quarterback, wide receiver, in the top 6 in that order. I really don't. So you have, to me, 3 really game-breaking wide receivers that are all worthy of a top 10 pick. And then when you look at it, there's some really great offensive tackles, I think, in this draft. Edge rushers, one where I feel like the top is good, but overall it falls off. So if you're like desperate for an edge rusher, you want one of those one or two guys that you really have that top end first round grade. Otherwise, wait until like 3rd, 4th round and hope you trust your scouts to find like a guy who you think like, hey, by year 2 or 3 could really develop if we build him the right way in our system, kind of looking for like the athletes beyond that. Defensive tackle also is another one where top end, really, really nice prospects and then tapers off quickly. But there's some guys with some really nice measurables, just not a lot of production at the college level. I feel like that way is just kind of where the offensive and defensive lines are going in college football anyways, just because they just don't get the practice time, the developmental time. You have a lot of raw bodies and people you like, oh, that's the size I want, but maybe the production's not there. And that's where that kind of, you talk about in life, there's that second puberty. It's kind of like second puberty of your talent growth in the NFL. There's guys who are better college players than NFL players. Tim Tebow. Zach Edey is a great example. He's going to be a better college player than he is a pro player. Then there are guys who are okay college players who become great pros just because the age, the game changes, the way they get coached in the NFL, things like that, the maturity. And so you see a lot of that. Tom Brady, great example. Way better pro, obviously, than a college player. He had trouble starting consistently. So those are a couple of the position groups I look at. One of the things to me, I always try to keep my eye on when you're going to the draft is over the last couple of years, the NFL has really become quarterback, protect your quarterback, get after the other team's quarterback. Those are the three big things, right? So you'd think quarterback, tackles, and then like edge rushers. Those are like the three priorities. But one of the things that I think you're seeing a premium on now too is corners who can ball out and play on their first contract. Finding cornerbacks and defensive backs that are on the rookie deals, because paying defensive backs a ton of money is always tough. And we always feel like a guy, after they get paid that big contract, the Jamal Adams of the world, I know he's a safety, but like, you think about guys in their second contract, they never live up to those giant second contracts as a corner, right? Like the shutdown corners. And so finding those guys who can be a shutdown corner in their first 3 or 4 years.
Sauce Gardner.
Yeah, and then let someone else pay them, right? It's kind of like that idea, like winning with a quarterback on a rookie deal, winning with a corner on a rookie deal. So finding those first, second, third round corners who can develop into shutdown guys, and then by the time you got to pay them, maybe you let them walk, or you get the most out of them when you're not paying them the most. So that's another key position. Sure. There's one corner I want to talk about in this episode. We'll talk about a little bit. So those are some of the high level overview things for me when you're looking at the draft, and also this draft specifically. Obviously, the quarterback's going to be fascinating because there are, to me, 6 names that could be called in round 1. And
easily
that will be really exciting to see if we actually get 6 names called in round 1 or not, and who are the ones that fall. Will Levis last year was very much expected to be in that first round. Still, he was the guy they were talking about. Remember last year at times, oh, no, it's Will Levis that the team is targeting at 3, or it's Will Levis that the team is eyeing to maybe trade into the top 5 for, and he falls to the second round. So who are the guys that are getting the hype that are going to fall, and who are the guys that maybe no one's talking about who are going to get snagged off the board in the middle of the first round? That is always the fascinating thing to keep an eye out for as we get closer to the draft.
Yeah, I mean, we're hearing like J.J. McCarthy now being rumored to be even potentially the first quarterback off the board, which is wild. But it kind of reminds me a lot of what Malik Willis, during that draft
he
was right, because his pro day, his everything pre-draft was just him on an upward trajectory like we haven't seen, and people thinking that he might be a top 10 pick, a top 5 pick potentially. And then he goes, late third round. He's like the 4th or 5th quarterback taken in that draft. And, it's just a bizarre set of circumstances.
Yeah.
We think to the draft with Kenny Pickett being the only first round quarterback. And this year we could potentially, as you said, see 6 names, off the board, which is just crazy to think about. But that is the class we're dealing with. And that's really more about the norm than we're used to. Kenny Pickett year 2022, that was an outlier year for sure. We usually see multiple quarterbacks go just because it's a premier position, and teams usually picking in the top don't have a good one. But more and more good
the Josh Allen draft class, that was Baker Mayfield, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson. Who else was in that one? Sam Darnold.
There was Josh Rosen a part of that one too?
There was 5 in that draft class. Yeah, 5 first rounders. Yeah. There was 5 in the Justin Fields, Trevor Lawrence. And so I fully expect 5, at least 5. I think the 6 will be interesting in pushing it. And Dan, when you brought up, there's an interesting point. It reminds me we as fans of football now have let the draft become such a gigantic thing. There is nothing else in sports, in all of American sports, that is like the NFL draft, in the sense that we can be talked into as just fans. The talking points from the Kuipers, from the Schefters, from the Tom McShays of the world, because GMs are this is a GM's time to lie out of their teeth and to even be telling the truth. But because they lie so much, we don't know what to believe. And I believe there are GMs. I believe there were GMs telling, Mel Kiper, the Bears could get a first for Justin Fields, because GMs love to lie at this time of the year. It's like GMs have a 2-3 month window where they can say whatever they want, and they're not judged for it. They're just judged on what they actually do. And right, it is exactly. No other time.
They use the media as a tool. It's an effective tool as a part of their, narrative spinning.
And I do think a large part of what the GMs are doing right now too is they're testing fan reaction. You leak something through an agent, through someone else, to make someone say something, just so then they can go and monitor what is the reaction on social media. What is the reaction on social media if the Vikings leak to Schefter to leak from someone that Schefter then goes on and says, unnamed sources say the Vikings are all in on trading up to 4 to get J.J. McCarthy? What is the reaction? Is their fan base, cursing the Vikings, saying this is the dumbest thing ever? Or is the fan base responding with, yes, do it? I absolutely think GMs and teams and franchises do stuff like that to gauge the temperature of their fan bases, to gauge the temperature of, hey, all of a sudden now the Cardinals are calling us saying, wait a minute, why are we hearing from Schefter that you want to trade to 4? You haven't called us to say you want to trade for 4. You know what I mean? It is all about that smoke and mirrors thing, and that's what makes the moments like the Malik Willis stuff happen, and why we fall for it, and why when we do our mock draft in 2 weeks from now, we're going to look really dumb in a month from now when we look back on it, because there's going to be things like, hey, we're hearing this, all the mocks are saying this, and then that guy doesn't even get drafted in the first round, and we put him in the top 10, because that's what they do, because this is the time. There's nothing else like it in American sports, and it's a really confusing, awesome, beautiful thing because of it.
A couple other things that stick out to me in terms of strengths and weaknesses of the overall class is that this might be one of the best offensive tackle drafts in terms of the top end talent that we've seen in a long time. And so I think that's going to be very interesting, because while a lot of these teams want skill position players, want their quarterbacks, offensive tackle is largely going to be a need for, 20 of the 32 teams, because tackles are just hard to find. And with edge rushers becoming more and more athletic, more and more freakish, tackle has now been as important of a position, or almost as important of a position as quarterback for most teams in the league. And so we're going to see some teams who we thought were going to take a quarterback, maybe go after a tackle instead and shore up their offensive line before they take the next guy to be their franchise leader. And so that'll be something key that I'm looking forward to looking at. And while most draft classes don't have a large or robust running back class, just because of the nature of that position and how it's kind of been deprioritized in the NFL, this is a particularly weak class. It's
agreed.
And inside linebacker, I don't know of a single inside linebacker that I could name right now to you that I'm like, oh yeah, I've heard of that guy.
Yeah.
And that's pretty unique. So off-ball linebacker, they're going to be taken obviously in this draft, but I highly doubt you see one taken in the first round, and you might not even see one taken in the second round, which is kind of crazy to think of, because they are still an important position. It's just that class seems to be so weak by consensus that it's just not going to make sense for teams.
The old Raiders teams with Al Davis, and then even with John Gruden, you'd always feel like they were reaching for position of need, right?
Always. Oh,
so much. Absolutely. And that's one of those, to me, running back, inside linebacker. Those are the types, where if you look at all the scouting reports that you trust and the different, rankings, none of them are really talking about a running back or an inside linebacker, things like that, in the top 50, 60 players. And if all of a sudden you see a team drafting a running back in the first round, it definitely will feel like that team's reaching for a position in need. Now, if they're a good team, it's doing it at the end of the first round, that's already a playoff team, and they don't have a lot of roster holes, that's one thing, versus your top 10 teams who have a lot of roster needs doing it like what the Raiders are always got in trouble for, right? So that is a great point you made there. I will add to that, one of the things that would really surprise me in this draft so far from what I'm looking at too, is that if we don't see more movement, I think we're going to see a lot of movement in as far as teams trying to trade down and teams trying to sell high on these quarterbacks to get the quarterback run to go earlier, because there is an elite kind of 8 players in this draft that feel like, oh, there's about 8 guys that just can't miss. Post that, there does feel like there's a lot of really good players.
There's like 50 first rounders.
But do you want to pay them as a top 10 first rounder versus do you want to pay them? Right. And I know the salary cap just went up, but you made that point earlier. Tackles, edge rushers. I made the point with cornerbacks. There are premier positions now. It's not just winning with a quarterback on a rookie deal. It's winning with a left tackle, an edge rusher, a corner on a rookie deal. Because again, you got to pay these guys so much money in their second contract.
Yeah.
Look how much the Bears are paying Jalen Johnson. Now, he's earned it, and I would argue he's really worth it because he's still just entering his prime because he's a second rounder, not a first rounder. So he's only after year 3 where you're paying him, you know what I mean? So it's not like by the time you're paying a first rounder after you pick up the 5th-year option, you may not be paying them till year 6, and with certain positions, then your prime is already gone. So it's a tricky thing with first rounders. You really got to hit, and you really got to get the most out of them to where you either lock them up to after year 3 because they're that successful, or you play out their 5 years and you let someone else try to pay them and figure it on out. And it's just the name of the game with how much teams are paying quarterbacks and paying some of these big name contracts for players. You want to win with quarterbacks, tackles, edge rushers on rookie deals for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah. It makes things a lot easier for the cap gurus in house to kind of finagle that every year with a little bit less of a taxing amount on the team. All right. We both kind of picked 3 teams in the respective conferences of our favorite teams.
Yeah.
So you, being the Bears fan, picked 3 NFC teams, 1 being the Bears. I picked 3 AFC teams, 1 being the Steelers, and kind of targeting positions that we're basically saying, if they don't take this position in the first 2 rounds, it's not good. It's a kind of a must-have, if you will, for these teams to address early in this draft and make sure they get one of the premier positions. So I'll let you go first with the Bears and tell me kind of what the need, and obviously with being the number 1 overall pick, there's kind of a no-brainer there, but more interested in seeing what do you think they need to attack at number 9, or at the very least in early round 2 as well.
So obviously the biggest need is quarterback, and we don't want to beat that nail into the ground, beat that horse dead. It's already dead. I will say at number 9, to me, the biggest need is to trade down. If one of the 3 wide receivers is not there, to me at number 9, it should be all about targeting Harrison Jr., Neighbors, or Odunze, right? And so if one of those 3 is not there, I'm very, very pro trading down. A lot of people are talking about the tackle out of Penn State, Fashanu, the top edge rusher at that point in time, depending on who you have ranked there. My priority at that point in time would be, the Bears really don't have a ton of draft capital in this draft. They have the 1 and the 9, which is awesome. Getting 2 top 10 picks would be great if one of those 3 wide receivers is still there. But if they're not, I'm then looking to add more capital. And 9 would be a really great spot if a quarterback is willing to trade down. So to me, that's what I would love to see the Bears do most at number 9, is get me one of those 3 top wide receivers. If they can't do that, get out of that pick, get into the teens, there's going to be a great player still available for you that will help your team, that will fill a need, whether then maybe it's interior offensive line, whether maybe it's then edge opposite of Sweat. Maybe it's another one of the wide receivers, the kid out of Texas, you know what I mean? Depending on how you rank people, to where you still could go get a player. The Bears also, are in desperate need of, in my opinion, another, young safety. Maybe at that point in time you look at like, hey, this is the Kevin Byard replacement, in that, late first round, depending on how far you trade back. You don't want to take a safety too early in the first round. So they're kind of in that weird window where, to me, I'd prefer one of the star wide receivers. Then if you can't get out of there and try to improve your draft overall while still getting 2 first-rounders this year.
Yeah, and maybe so is the goal to try and get a second in that case. Like you want to get back into the second round of this draft.
Get back in the second round, because again, there's that a lot of the top 60 players, top 50 players, there's a ton of them. And so can you end up with 3 of the top 50, Caleb Williams being one, as opposed to just 2 of the top 50, where at number 9, you might be overpaying for a guy you could still get at 13, 14, 15, depending on, again, quality. Team, the Bears' need versus what's still available. The tackles and the quarterbacks, keep an eye for it. The wide receivers are gone. The tackles and the quarterbacks, that means, will be a high priority for teams at number 9, because that means there'll still probably be one of those elite tackles and maybe 2 or 3 of those quarterbacks still available. So the Bears could maybe get a little bit more for that number 9 pick in trading out if the wide receivers are gone at that point.
For the Pittsburgh Steelers, they pick at 20, and it's a very interesting situation that they find themselves in, because they actually do have like a few kind of dire needs. Yeah. They're absolutely starved for a center.
That's the Bears too.
They desperately
but you
need
can't
one.
draft one in the first round. You just can't do it.
Yeah, I mean, at 20, a lot of people have been, alluding to Jackson Powers Johnson of Oregon, because there's essentially, by consensus, 3 centers in this draft that are starter capable in year 1.
Yeah.
And so you roll the dice if you don't take them in the first round. Is it going to make it to you? And I think pick 51 is what the Steelers have. Like, is one of those centers going to make it all the way 30 picks later? You probably, if it were me, I agree with you. I don't think I would feel great with them going all eggs into that basket in the first round, because that's such a premium pick. If anything, I would want them to trade down a little bit. If you can trade down to 30 and then you take a center there, I'd feel a little bit more comfortable with that. And you pick up an early third or a late second for that. That'd be awesome. So I'd be all game for that. If they stay at 20, I think it's pretty clear. They traded Deontay Johnson. They're now in the market for a wide receiver to be taken in the first round. And if there's a team that can get the most out of a top talent at the position, it's the Pittsburgh Steelers. So for the Steelers, who haven't taken a wide receiver in the first round in quite some time, I think it'd be awesome for them to get a great talent, because what I feel they could get out of that is exponential in just the first year. There's going to be guys like a Brian Thomas largely available at that spot. Gosh, if Odunze somehow falls that far, I mean, that'd be amazing. Jalen Polk, even, like, there are some really, really good wide receivers that you can target early in this class. So I think wide receiver is firmly in play for them. Cornerback, while it is a need for this team still, they do have clearly a number 1 now in Joey Porter Jr. I feel confident saying that finally they've got their cornerback 1, which they've been looking for probably 6 years. They got Dante Jackson from the Panthers. Not ideal to have as your number 2, but there's worse number 2s out there.
He's a capable player, yeah.
Yeah, and with the depth at corner, I feel like, okay, that could be also a second-round target. So for me, I think it's wide receiver or offensive tackle, because they moved up to draft Broderick Jones a year ago from Georgia. They had to move him to right tackle because that was where the need was. I think it's best for him to be moved back to left tackle and then get a true right tackle in this draft. There's some really, really good ones. So wide receiver or tackle, I'd be perfectly fine with those being the first round selections. And then in round 2, hopefully you can find a center there. Now, if you go tackle and center in the first 2 picks, you're not feeling, it's not sexy to start a draft by any means, but you could still probably get wide receivers.
I don't know.
Late in the second,
in Pittsburgh, it's a lot like Chicago. I think that would still be okay. Like, it's like, run the ball. Like
you could do it. You could
football. You know what I mean? Build it from from inside out. I will say the perception always is, you nailed it there with it's really tough drafting a center in the first round. Part of the reason why it's tough drafting a center or guard in the first round is the perception is, if you're drafting a first rounder, your thought should be, this person projects to be a Hall of Fame, we're going to retire their number type person for our franchise, right? That's what you think about when you take a first rounder. When you're thinking about a first rounder, you have to think, this person, we want them to be here for 10 years. And when they retire, it's like when Jason Kelce just retired and you're like, tears, the city is crying. What a hell of a career this guy fought heart and soul for us. And they may not make the Hall of Fame, but they're going to make our Ring of Honor or whatever. That's what you want out of every first round pick. Yeah. It's hard, really hard to do that as a center or a guard, especially when centers, as you mentioned, there's only 3 that we really project to even be starters day one in the league, in this draft. Now, if there was 7 who are like, no, these are first, if there's a center who is grading out like you grade out Joe Alt, who you're like, no, this dude is going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer.
Sure.
Then that's fine, because you can justify the grade, you can justify the hype, but it is a tough position in that way to go. I will say,
does feel like those 3. It feels like those 3 are in that discussion in the first round, mainly because there's, like you said, there's the scarcity of position. There's only 3 of them, and so because of that, it ups their value a little bit. But are any of them generational prospects that you go wow about? So far it doesn't appear.
You don't want to reach
that. And we're seeing a lot of that out of the tackle class.
GMs are, as we said, they're not judged on what they say. They're judged on what they do. And if you're the guy who takes a center in the first round and he ends up flaming out, not being good enough, like that is going to that'll kill you. Especially that graphic your fans will bring it up, like, you took the center who was then benched by year 3 over this guy who's now a Pro Bowler, right? Like, you know what I mean? This star receiver, this star tight end, or whatever it might be. I want to quickly mention before we move on to the next team.
One sec, Mark. We've got some unfortunate breaking news here that I just saw come across. Vontae Davis, former NFL cornerback. I actually believe he will be remembered for. I think he retired midway through a game.
Yeah.
Right?
Isn't that what's his name? Davis's brother.
Is it Terrell Davis? I'm not sure. I don't know. Vontae Davis. I don't know what. But he was found dead, unfortunately, at the age of 35 in his home in South Florida, which is, man, it seems like we're like a lot of former pro athletes are, dying at such early ages. I'm just reading the article right now and reading this information. I just saw the ESPN ping on the phone, so I'm not sure who was reporting it. I'm sure
I thought that was Vernon Davis's brother.
Oh, yeah, that could be because they would be around the same age. They're saying that the preliminary investigation says foul play was not involved.
Oh, terrible,
brutal. So yeah, sorry to
he did retire
bring
at
that
halftime.
downer of a news, but that stuck out for sure. So yeah, terrible news.
What I will say about before we move on, because I know Bears fans will come at me. Well, you glossed over tackles so quickly at 9. Listen, if Alta Fashanu is there and the Bears are sold on them, then they better be sold on Jones moving into one of the guard spots, because Braxton Jones has become a really solid tackle for the Chicago Bears, a left tackle. Yeah. And if you're sold then on and him playing guard, and if Ryan Poles and the coaching staff is like, no, this dude could really, really be a star guard. Guard now is where the Bears, they have a little extra depth. If they then trust one of those guards to then be their starting center, going forward, Davis or whoever it might be, Tevin Jenkins. But I just don't think they're thinking that way. But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they look at it and they say the goal is to get Caleb. And then, we like Braxton Jones, but we'd rather him be our swing backup tackle and just go with an all-world Fashanu. If that's what they're sold on, I'll trust it. But I just think at this point in time, getting more picks and or the star wide receiver is more important right now than improving an already really solid position with the Bears have. They need a starting center. That is desperate.
I am curious before you move on to your next team.
Yeah.
The options at 9, if those 3 receivers are off the board, was Brock Bowers in consideration in your mind?
For
or is
me,
it just because you'd have 2 tight ends, even though he's really more of a hybrid guy, a receiver?
We'll talk Brock Bowers here in a little bit. I have him as one of my kind of 3 players I wanted to touch on.
Me too.
That's good. So I'll save it for that. I will just say for me right now, again, in my world, no. In my world, if someone's in love with Brock Bowers, let them trade up and let's improve our draft, right? Yeah. If the Bears decide to go with Brock Bowers, well, I'm going to be pumped to see exactly how they plan to use him then. And then, then that offense is like, oh, okay, what are we doing with this offense then? Because this could be really, what is this offense going to look like? Because now there are a lot of mouths to feed. And I worry then, like, are you going to basically turn Brock Bowers into an X receiver? Like, what is his role going to be? Because if Keenan Allen is not, I don't expect Keenan Allen to play 17 games for Chicago Bears. I expect him to play 13. You know what I mean? Like, that's just like, he's going to tweak a hamstring at some point. He's going to tweak an ankle. He's just that guy who gets a little beat up this late in his career. So, DJ Moore with Brock Bowers and Cole Kmet, that's still really a nice
pretty good
weapons for Caleb Williams. But, again, there's a lot of depth and there's a lot of still need for this Bears.
Yeah,
they need a starting center. They need guard depth. They need an edge rusher. Like, they have 3 really important positions. And I would argue they need a wide receiver number 3. Like, wide receiver number 3, center, edge, and quarterback. Obviously, those are 4. Like, they cannot start the season without improving those 4 slots immediately. So, Arizona is what I want to talk about next, because Arizona to me is so fascinating. Arizona holds the keys to the draft. Like, we feel like we know Arizona is kind of the linchpin of where the floodgates could open as far as chaos. You know what I mean? You're waiting for that Adam Schefter alert of the Shefty bomb of Arizona's traded with the Minnesota Vikings, and now we expect it to go quarterback, right? So Arizona is such a crucial part of this whole thing. Arizona cannot afford to miss out on Harrison Jr., Neighbors, or Dunze. They've got to. If you're Arizona and any team that's calling you is saying, all right, that's great, you want to move up from 13 or you want to move up from 12, fine, but can you find me that other trade partner then who's willing to move back to 12? Because we're not willing to move back beyond 8 or 9 to where we're going to miss out on one of these 3 wide receivers. We just can't do it. Like, they need a number 1. And the exciting thing is this wide receiver group has 3 number 1s, starting number 1s. I really, truly believe that with Harrison Jr., Neighbors, and Odunze. So I think these guys could come in and have the impact that Chase and Jefferson had as rookies. So if you're the Arizona Cardinals, that'll be a really fun storyline to follow. What can you get versus what are you willing to give up with those 3 wide receivers? It'll be interesting. To me, the Hail Mary offer would be the Vikings. Like, if you're the Cardinals, you can justify taking that Vikings 2 first-round picks and saying to yourself, wow, now we have 4 first-rounders. We can do some damage here. Because remember, I believe they have the Texans first-rounder as well.
Let me check and see. I have the draft order up right now.
Yes, they have 27. They have 27. So
there you go.
They would then end up having 11, 23, and 27. So if you're Arizona, could you justify moving off on one of those really crucial players to just say, well, you know what? We're gaining an extra first round pick and probably more. Like they'll probably get
and they'll probably trade out of one of those.
You know what I mean? And so it's that would, to me, Arizona needs a wide receiver. They got to take one no matter what. Are they willing to risk giving up on Harrison Jr., Neighbors, and Odunze for a haul? So that's going to be a fascinating storyline to look at.
That is absolutely for sure. Well, one of my teams that I picked, I might do an honorable mention just because there were three others that I was very excited about to talk. Okay, cool.
I like it.
First one is the Jets, which sit at 10. For me, the Jets, they're in a situation where they really have to go all in. I mean, there is no other option here. They have
that Hassan Reddick move was all in. They traded a 2026 third rounder that could become a second rounder.
That could be a second. I mean, that's a great deal. Absolutely, to get a premier edge rusher to help.
That's a future me problem for the Jets.
Yes, and also, but at the same time, it wasn't a top need for the Jets. They still have all of their 5 top needs that I would say need to be addressed, and it's all on the offensive side. Now, they did address the offensive line. They've got 3 offensive linemen that they've added, right? And 2 tackles being a part of that.
Mike Williams.
Still think they could, and they added Mike Williams. Absolutely. That's a big get. For me at 10, they have 2 options and 2 options alone. You take a wide receiver, you take another dominant wide receiver. If, Odunze's available there, you grab him, or trade back a few spots and get a Brian Thomas or something, or just take him there. I think that is absolutely in play. You want to give Aaron Rodgers as many weapons as possible to throw to, because he's not going to have much time to throw. Even if you dominate your offensive line acquisitions this offseason, it's not going to be a perfect job done to come, because they were the worst. It was the worst offensive line that we've seen in some time last year. And so you're not going to be able to make it the best. That being said, the other clear option is offensive tackle, and there might be the best one available still. It might be the best offensive tackle on the board for Shanu, or one of those other guys there that's available. And I say, even though you got 2 tackles this offseason, Tyron Smith is, how old is he? 40?
Yeah. He's a 1 year.
And so it actually might be good to have a great veteran there to bring along a young offensive tackle, and have one that, 5 games into the season becomes your everyday starter. Plug him in there, athletic, can get on the move, and help protect Aaron Rodgers. That is tantamount right now for this team. So, offensive tackle, wide receiver, those are so glaring that I was like, if one of those 2 positions isn't taken at number 10, then I don't know what they're doing. They take a safety or Byron Murphy or something.
No, they don't need they don't need defense. You it feels very similar to the Bears. Like, a lot of people are saying they need to take an edge at 9. It's the same thing with the Jets. You have a defensive head coach. No.
You'll figure it out.
Your culture is defense. So to me, you need to find the dude in the 3rd round who you coach up to be a stud. Like, that's your
right.
But offensively, no. You don't have the necessarily the eye for it or the culture for it. So draft that as the position to me. Let the talent, get the talent in the building, especially because they're an inept, talented, offensive football team historically. So I agree with you. That's great.
Absolutely. All right, what do you got?
I'm gonna go. Which one do I want to leave for honorable mention? I'll leave that for. All right, I'm gonna go with the Vikings. The Vikings, for the sanity of their fan base, they need to leave the 1st round or the 2nd round with a quarterback, preferably the 1st round. Now, the Vikings have some flexibility, right? They have that 12 and they have that 20. What was it? 21, 23 they got from 23 they got from Cleveland. So whether it is trading the haul to go up, if I were a Vikings fan, I would not trade into 4. I would not give up 2 first rounders and move up all of that just to get the 4th quarterback off the board. If I was a Vikings fan and I couldn't get into the top 3, if I couldn't get 1, 2, or 3, I would stand pat at 12, and I would say, I'm willing to risk one of those guys falling to me. I'm willing to risk McCarthy falling to me at 12, right? Like, I just am not giving up.
Yeah.
I'm not giving up picks to go get McCarthy, Nix, or Penix Jr. I'm willing to give stuff up for Williams, for Drake May, for Jane Daniels. I'm willing to give stuff up. I'm willing to move up for those guys. I'm not willing to move up for Nix, and the other two, McCarthy and Penix Jr. So that's going to be fascinating, because if you're a Vikings fan and you pick at 12 and you don't take a quarterback there, and McCarthy is still on the board.
It's 11 actually. But yeah.
At 11, if you pick at 11 and you don't take a quarterback there, and McCarthy's still on the board, Nix is still on the board, and Penix is still on the board, then you run into that situation where, are you praying one of them is still there at 23? Or is this the organization telling you, we truly don't like any of those guys, and we're going to take a flyer on someone maybe in the second round or the third round, but otherwise we're going to ride with Sam Darnold for a year? And maybe then the Vikings are also telling you, we're going to try to put ourselves in the position that the Falcons were in a year ago, where, hey, we're going to try to make it work with a veteran quarterback, or we're going to be, in a position to where we're drafting a quarterback really high next year because we're going to lose some games and we're going to end up with a top 10 pick. Or maybe they end up in a world where they are the destination for a veteran quarterback next year, i.e. a Kirk Cousins type of someone who needs a home to go to. It'll be, the Vikings have to figure out the quarterback situation in the first round, whether it's trading up, whether it's waiting, and that's going to be fascinating to see.
It'll have to be absolutely a plan. Everything will have to be meticulously planned out by them. It's strategic moving up and down the board for them.
The bummer for the Vikings is the Bears have two of the prime spots for them to move into.
Yeah,
and like, if you're the Bears, you're not letting the Vikings draft a quarterback in a trade.
Certainly not at a discount. I mean, they're going to have to way overpay.
You can't. Like, ideologically, like fan base wise, you just can't. Like, if you're Ryan Poles, you have to sit there and be smart enough to know there's no way on God's green earth am I trading with the Vikings for 1 or 9. If they trade ahead of me at 8, at 7, at 6, I can't do anything about that, right? And they go get a quarterback.
I mean, yeah, but if the Vikings give you, there's never an offer that's too, but
if
the Vikings way overpay to get to 9, for instance,
they would have to give up. They'd have to give up 11 and 23 for 9.
Yeah.
And even then, is it worth it then if you're the Bears, if JJ McCarthy goes 2-0 against the Bears next year and he wins 10 games?
Well, also, is it worth it for the Vikings at that point to jump 2 spots, because you're only jumping the Jets? And at this point, are the Jets going to take a quarterback at 10 if that's the case? I mean, they could. Maybe some could argue they should, but if you're trying to win now with Aaron Rodgers, it's not the prudent move to then take the quarterback of the future at number 10. So that's
what scares you.
They would have to be worried about being traded. Is someone trading with the Jets to jump the Vikings?
What scares you if you're Minnesota is, you need the 4th quarterback could come off the board at 6, at 8, at 6, really. I mean, that's it. I mean, you New York.
Or 8. I mean, the Falcons could take a quarterback.
Or if any of those teams are open to trade, if the Chargers, Giants, Tennessee, Falcons, Chicago, if Denver, Vegas want to get ahead of them, New Orleans or Seattle want to get ahead of them, that's what scares them. Is the Vikings are in a decent spot unless someone trades ahead of them. And then do you overthink it, and do you trade up so high that no one can trade ahead of you? Then you're what you can't give up 2 first rounders and only go to 5, because then you leave yourself so vulnerable for someone still to jump you at 4. And so it's 4 or nothing in a lot of weird ways. So it's going to be, that's why to me, the Vikings, Arizona were 2 no-brainers for this first rounder. I mean, it's crazy. I mean, they're going to control the talk and the draft until the day of.
The Falcons are also really interesting to me, because I do wonder if I wouldn't rule them out of the quarterback sweepstakes because yes, they've signed Kirk Cousins, but it also could just be a 2-year deal the way it's written and worked out. And there's certainly precedents for quarterbacks sitting and learning. And with Kirk Cousins, are they planning on being inside the top 10 pick over the next few years? Probably not. They're probably looking more at about 15. And how are they going to get their quarterback of the future at that point? So I am curious.
Yeah.
If a nice fourth quarterback option is available to the Falcons, would they consider taking one? That'll be interesting to see.
It would be interesting. They do have just other needs, and I think if you're Atlanta, the benefit of that is very small in the sense that if Kirk doesn't play well right off the bat, like you then have this.
There's worse issues.
You then have you have this whole put in the rookie and then you're paying him so much money. So that's a tough.
And you got to make sure that you set up Kirk to succeed because you're paying him this money and
I'm with you in the sense that it's maybe a smart decision long term for their franchise, but I also think they put themselves in a position where they would be much smarter to take a guy in the third round, fourth round. They should definitely take a third or fourth rounder on a quarterback that they like, who they could project to be like, hey, what could this guy look like in 2 years under Kirk Cousins, learning the game? Does he have the measurables, the intangibles? Can he get bigger, stronger, whatever it might be? And then we might be able to stash him for 2 years and then give him a chance. That's an interesting thing if you're the Falcons for sure.
My final team is the Denver Broncos. They sit at 12. Yeah. And I'm probably eyeing Denver more than most teams because I'm so fascinated by what they're going to do. They don't have a second round pick this year. Yep. They don't have much future capital. They have a lot of money that they're still paying Russell Wilson. So they're going to be so intentional about these picks because they have to be, because it matters so much to their long-term goals and towards what's going to happen in the Sean Payton era. Quarterback is obviously their biggest need at 12. They're a prime candidate for trying to make a big move to go up, but at the same time, they don't have the capital to really do that. And at the same time, even if they did, they have a lot of needs that they have to address on this team. And so to get rid of so many future picks just to get what could be, I doubt that they're going to be able to trade with Washington for the number 2. And I doubt they're going to be able to trade with New England for the number 3. And so again, we're talking about trying to get the fourth best quarterback. Are you going to trade up and mortgage your future to get the fourth best quarterback in the draft?
It's so interesting because they can't afford to. They just can't.
They can't. I know.
Because they need to trade back and they need to get more picks and get young and cheap because they're stuck in cap hell for 2 years.
Exactly.
And so if you're Denver, I truly think you're praying to the gods that Minnesota doesn't love the guy you love and that your guy falls to you and that you're able to take him. And if you can't
and you can just do with it, what you please. I mean, Brock Bowers might be a solid matching for them if they stick there.
I truly, if I was Sean Payton and if I was Denver, if I was the organization, I'd say we need to absolutely go into the tank this year. We need to win less than 4 games and just know that this is a massive reset. And I don't want it. I want to win. That's why you hired me. But the best thing we can do is completely reset after this because otherwise the climb to trying to stay relevant and also dealing with the cap hell. West. Yeah, it's just going to be a nightmare for them. It's going to be a nightmare. So I'm with you. I mean, Denver is Broncos fans. I feel for them because I have no idea what the best path is. If it was me, I don't like McCarthy, Nix, or Penix enough to just give them the keys to my franchise.
Yeah.
And I trust Sean Payton as an offensive coach, but do I trust him to win in the AFC against Justin Herbert and Patrick Mahomes with JJ McCarthy or Bo Nix. Like that seems like a losing matchup. And if you ride with that guy, you're riding with him for at least 3 years with a first rounder. It's 3 years with a first round quarterback. Unless you're so inept or struggle so much like a Kenny Pickett to where it's 2 and then you have to move off him, right? So I don't think they'll be inept enough with Sean Payton as a good offensive coach to like that's 3 years of mediocrity. And all of a sudden Sean Payton's losing his job too. And the organization's just completely starting over again. If in 3 years from now, they're trying to start over with another quarterback and God knows how many more Super Bowls Patrick Mahomes has won by then. So let's see. The Denver's just going to be. If Sean Payton can find a way to get Denver to the playoffs next year, he really is that dude. Like he's that. I mean, that's going to be so impressive if he can do that. Yeah. My honorable mention team is the Rams. The Rams, you got to replace Aaron Donald now. And there are 2 names that I love and I think are both capable of like giving you, hey, we found a guy. He's not going to be Aaron Donald. No one's going to be Aaron Donald, but this guy's mean and he's angry up front and he is going to command double teams. And that's Newton out of Illinois. And that's Brian Murphy, the second out of Texas. Those 2 dudes are They're men and they're beasts. And they are legitimate 3 techniques that are first round grades. I don't know if they're top 10 guys. They're, maybe. But those are guys that are absolutely in the wheelhouse for where the Rams are picking. One of those 2 being available and slotting them in and saying, hey, you got giant shoes to fill. But we're not asking you to be Aaron Donald. We're asking you to be you and to just take on some double teams and help this young, exciting defense get better. And I think that's kind of a no-brainer for them. If they wait to the second round, Fisk out of FSU, shorter arms, but he's got good upside. And then Jenkins out of Michigan. Again, not exactly the numbers you love, but like the pure raw strength and size, dude's just a monster. Like just if you could coach him up, he could be nasty.
Absolutely. Yeah. My honorable mention were the Jaguars at 17. They're in a position where it's like it's put up or shut up time.
Yeah.
Because they have to start winning, not just the division, but like this is the time for Trevor Lawrence. This is the time for Peterson.
It's a huge year for Trevor Lawrence.
Big year.
He's the last of his class. Like, I mean, it's a huge year for him.
Absolutely. And so do they take an offensive tackle and just say we're going all in on that? They got Cam Robinson, but they could use another. They need really just any best available offensive lineman, to be honest. Whatever they can get on the offensive line, go ahead and get it. And then they got to go and get a playmaking corner or an edge because Trayvon Walker hasn't worked out great so far. So yeah, something in that realm for round 2 for them, but definitely offensive line in the first round, I think is super crucial for them to target. Real quick, in terms of the players, I'm fascinated to see what goes on with Cooper DeJean.
He's on my list.
Okay, nice.
Maybe
we have the exact same list. That'd be hilarious.
He's a white corner.
Yeah, a white cornerback. One of
in the first round.
First in probably very, very long time.
He's just about 6'1", 205, 207. First
and he's
team,
super versatile. I mean, he could
return
any
specialist.
Scheme. He could play safety. He could do anything. He really can.
He's got a big star by him. I've seen a couple different draft people I trust is like a return specialist. And with these new kickoff rules, he's going to be an interesting name to keep an eye on. The white cornerback from Iowa could be a first-round pick.
He's someone I could see going as early as to like the Titans if they wanted to. I mean, he seems like he'd be a fit in Tennessee.
Yeah.
Or, to the Rams. Like the Rams would be an interesting fit too. But yeah, I agree. He's a very fascinating, versatile player that I could see going anywhere in the first round. But I do think he's going to go first round.
The other one would be then Brock Bowers for me. That would be number 2 on my list. And he was on your list, I know. To me, the one that's fascinating is that and we keep using the word fascinating too much. Sorry, listeners. I understand. We got to find a better word. But that's what it's all about the projections, right? So it is, you're thinking about it, and we are fascinated by the draft. So we'll find a better word. But Brock Bowers, I've seen, 2 months ago, 3 months ago, 4 months ago, like drafts where it's like, oh no, he's top 5 pick.
Right. Yeah, for sure.
Now I've seen drafts. I saw one on CBS just like 2 days ago where Brock Bowers slid to the Chiefs.
Yeah.
At 30.
Yeah.
And so
that'd be one hell of a pick for the Chiefs.
Oh my God, that would be that'd be crazy.
You have the heir apparent to Travis Kelce.
He would be 100% a fit. He'd be 100% a home running to Kansas City.
Yeah.
The thing that concerns me about Brock Bowers, the ankle injury is a real injury. He already had the tightrope surgery, and for a guy who his game is different, like Travis Kelce's 6'5", 250. Brock Bowers is 6'3", 242, 243 if he on like a heavy day. And like, to put it in example, people are like, oh, well, Kyle Pitts is slight. Kyle Pitts is 6'6", 250. So you're giving up in a modern NFL where we're seeing more and more, especially these new rule changes just happen, the bigger tight ends, Kittle, Kelce, Andrews, Cole Kmet, Laporta, 6'5", 6'6", all of these guys, 250, 255, running at 4'4", 4'5". Like, they are the matchup problems. Kyle Pitts, at a slight 6'6", has been underwhelming in his career. Brock Bowers, at only 6'3", really he's not much of a blocker at all. He's just not. Laporta and Kittle, I mean, these guys at Iowa, those tight ends, don't compare Brock Bowers, to those guys at all. His comparison is Pitts, and the problem is we all still feel like Pitts has the upside. It just hasn't worked out yet. And so I worried that's why Brock Bowers is sliding. And that, again, is why Brock Bowers at 9, I'd be very interested to see what that offense looks like, because you have Cole Kmet as he is like a mini George Kittle, like a physical fitness specimen, not Gronk, not Laporta, were just man size, but more like Kittle, where it's like the dude's got a 6-pack and he's 6'6". You know what I mean? Like, just physically ripped. So that concerns me a little bit. I'll be very interested to see where Brock Bowers ends up. If he ends up in a place like a Kansas City, they trade up for him. If he ends up with an offensive coach,
could be cool.
If he ends up with an offensive coach, a Charge or something like that, it'll be really cool to see, and I'll be very, very excited to see that. The concern will be if he ends up in a place where it's like, oh, we got now our weapon, he's our savior. He's not Sam Laporta. He's not Kittle. And even though, it's only 2 inches and only 10 pounds, in the NFL, that matters. Like, Travis Kelce has Mahomes. So, like, who's throwing Brock Bowers the ball? So that will be the thing to keep an eye on for Brock Bowers.
Yeah, will he be in line capable for you? Probably not. He is like he certainly will play.
He played the SEC,
there,
he's tough.
Yeah, but at the NFL level, I agree. He's much more of a Pitts, but a much smaller Pitts. So that's a concern. The other one for me I'm just amazed by, to use another adjective or word,
fascinating.
Is Amarius Mims, the tackle out of Georgia. And the big reason for that is because he's like the number 5 or 6 tackle, ranked. But if he was in another class, he might be number 1, 2, 3.
Yeah.
But just because of how deep and heavy this class is, he's also very raw. But the guy is 6'7", 340 pounds.
Monster.
And quite athletic. Like, he's a very interesting prospect, and he could go. I mean, he's being mocked to like the Steelers at 20. He could go to a lot of different teams right around that area that I think, if they are able to be a little patient with him, could end up hitting an absolute home run with a guy who's got, relatively amazing ceiling. It's just that he's going to be a work in progress and probably not ready day one. But man, he's got a lot of tools, and Georgia offensive linemen have worked out pretty well over the last, half decade or so. And he's also only got that 1 year of experience too. So a lot of question marks around him, but so much to like about his profile that I think I'm very interested to see how teams evaluate him and whether or not he can sneak himself into the first round, because he is valued as a top 32 player, but it's also about whether teams are taking 6-7 tackles in the first round or not. So
I'm going to be selfish with my last one, and I'm just going to say this is a person that I've fallen in love with. Like, I really want this person on my team, and I've got even more of a crush since the Keenan Allen move, and that's Rome Odunze. So if you watch Rome Odunze play and then you look at his measurables and you watch Keenan Allen play and you look at his measurables, they're the same guy. Like Keenan Allen, 6'2", 212. Rome Odunze, 6'3", 214. Like the fluidness to the body, the catchability, the hands, the route running, they are like, he's the second coming of Keenan Allen. I really feel that way. He also is not a diva wide receiver. He had 92 catches this last year, 1,600 yards, led FBS, 13 touchdowns. The year before, 75 catches, 1,100 yards, 7 touchdowns. So he's done it 2 years in a row. I've seen consistent production. So I know it's not a flash in the pan. Oh, he only was good with 1 year with Michael Penix Jr. No, he can be a guy also in the modern route tree that's so different from DJ Moore, to where those two together, like that's the pairing you look at for the next 3-4 years, because they'll be locked in step together, right?
And what's a young quarterback's best friend is a receiver that can separate, and that's his number one trait, is that he just gets open.
And the thing about him is there is that story that is like now becoming like the story that they'll tell on draft night, and you're going to hear it a million times, but if you haven't heard it yet, I'm going to tell you here first. Broke his rib, punctured his lung, spent a night or two in the hospital. It was going into their bye week, so he rested all bye week and then played the following week, less than 2 weeks later, against Oregon in one of their games against Oregon. So don't tell me about a guy who's like, oh, I'm projected first rounder, I'm a diva. Like, this kid balls. Like, this kid wanted to play, all grit, bleeping punctured lung, fractured rib. I would still be complaining about that. I would still be taking time off months later from that injury. So I love that profile too. And I love the idea of, where have we seen the young quarterbacks in the recent drafts who got drafted be successful? When you look at them getting paired with a wide receiver to grow with. I mean, look at Matt Ryan and Julio Jones paired together. You know what I mean? Early in their careers. You look at Jamar Chase and Joe Burrow, obviously the college connection, but they paired them smartly together. Boom. A year later, growth. And for a chance to do Caleb Williams with Rome Odunze, and not even pressure on Rome Odunze. You got to say to Rome Odunze, listen, kid.
Yeah, he'd be wide receiver number 3.
You're going in as wide receiver number 3. Shut your mouth and learn from a first ballot Hall of Fame guy in Keenan Allen and a DJ Moore, who is an absolute stud and plays the game so different than you, but is also a hard-nosed, tough SOB. Like, that is such an exciting prospect for Bears fans. So, again, whatever happens at 9, I am pro trading back. I am pro a lot of things, but if you had to tell me dream scenario, Marvin Harrison, but I don't think he's fallen.
Yeah, no, he's not in that.
But I like Odunze more than Neighbors, and I think the reason why is the film comparison to Keenan Allen, and then the rib thing, like that, just like those stories you hear, and you're like, that's awesome. I fucking love that guy.
That is cool. That is super cool. I love it. All right, well, that has been a robust draft overview episode, if I do say so myself.
Yeah, I'm so excited for next week's episode.
Right. Yeah.
I'm paring my list down to 10. I've had like 3 rough drafts already, and I'm struggling. I hate my own list. I'm like, can't do this right now.
Exactly. Yeah. Next week, folks, the 8th, we are going to be going over the top 10 players of this millennium. So 2000 and after. We're also including guys who were, in the prime of their careers in the 2000s as well. So if they got drafted in 97, 98, we're counting those players.
If they were eligible for like the all 2000s team or like and not eligible for the all 90s team, a la the Urlachers, you know what I mean? Like late 90s draft picks. Yeah.
Yeah. If they were dominant in 2000 or later, we're counting it. And so that's how we'll go about it. Excited to go through that list. It's going to be very hard to narrow it down to 10. I think Aaron Donald will be on it. I'm going to just throw that out there, but
Aaron Donald will be on it. He's going to be on it.
He's going to be on it.
The problem is you just, like we talked about last week with these lists, you start to like say to yourself, what do I value more?
Yeah.
They're all great. You're going to have Hall of Famers. All of them are going to be Hall of Famers. So, and then you have guys who are still playing right now who I argue belong on that list.
Definitely. I mean, there's probably a few that are playing right now that deserve to be on that list. Be interested to see what yours looks like. We'll have that for you all next week. The week after our official first round mock draft, we'll draft for every team in that first round, and then the week after is of course draft week, and we'll be doing a live show there reacting to the first round. So we hope you can join us there for that. But that'll do it for this episode of the Football Lounge with Mark and Dan. We will see you back here next time.